Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to College Aid Pros Financial Aid 101. We'll give everybody just a minute to get started and get logged in. If somebody's willing and you can hear me okay, will you put in the chat that you can hear me or give me a thumbs up? I'd really appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right. We'll give it just 30 more seconds. Hope everybody in Colorado's doing fantastic tonight. I'm coming to you live from Houston, Texas. We've had a bunch of rain down here the last couple days, but we're doing pretty good. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get this started. All right. So welcome to College Aid Pros, how to maximize financial aid and scholarships. We like to call it Financial Aid 101. I'm really excited to be here with you. We'll be here for about the next hour. I am writing solo today, so if you have questions and use the Q&A section, please be patient with me. I'll do my best to answer them as I'm going through, but there's a good chance I won't be able to get to all of them tonight. So please keep that in mind, but I'll do the best I can. So if you're not too familiar with College Aid Pro, our mission is to end the student debt crisis and empower families to shop smarter for college. Obviously, the amount of debt people are taking on to attend college and the cost of going to school is just staggering and going up at a breakneck pace. And we want to make sure that you guys leave here as informed consumers and can make informed decisions as you go through this process over the next year and a half. I'm Chuck Bates. Like I said, I'm in Houston, Texas. I work full-time as a financial advisor. I got into this college planning space several years ago. My wife and I were foster parents, and we adopted a little boy and found out in the state of Texas, any kids coming out of foster care or child protective service get tuition waivers at in-state universities. So that really got me interested in the space, made me wonder, what else don't I know? So I jumped in with both feet 12 years ago and started studying and learning more about it. And that's how I've become to working with College Aid Pro. So I'm happy to share that knowledge I've gained over the last 12 years with you guys. For all of you families who are part of the Dawson community, I'm super excited for you. The summer initiative gives you guys access to the MyCap software. You're welcome to scan this code and start the sign-up process right now. I'll leave it up for just a minute. The software is going to be your primary tool. It's an incredible tool and will help you really as you go through. Give Dawson a big thank you for giving you a premium MyCap account for a year. And we'll just give this a few more seconds before we move on in case anybody wants to scan that QR code. And please note the coupon code at the bottom. Dawson School 100 is what you'll need to get your account for free for the year. All right, well, here we go. And again, if you guys do have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section, not the chat. I'm not monitoring the chat as much as I am the Q&A, and I'll do my best to get to them as they come up. So where are we going to start? Like I said, you guys have the great benefit of having a MyCap software account for a year, the premium version. It has every scholarship at every college. It's got over $5 billion in private scholarships. It's got a net price calculator for every school and an EFC calculator, or what's now SAI. There's also tools to help you complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile, which are the two independent financial aid applications you'll need to complete starting in about October. So this is the main tool, and this is going to be the hub of everything you do and a lot of what we talk about today. It's going to be a great resource for you guys. So as we get started, let's talk a little bit about financial aid and what it is exactly. Financial aid is basically a discount to the sticker price, which is the cost of attendance. Every school will list the cost of attendance on their website. You can Google, any school, University of Nebraska, cost of attendance, University of Colorado Boulder, cost of attendance. And it should probably take you right to the page where it'll tell you exactly what it costs. There's going to be explicit costs, tuition, room and board. And then there'll be indirect costs, which could be things like books, travel, miscellaneous expenses. Um, and there's three types of financial aid. So there's need-based grants. This is free money awarded based on your family's financial situation. So the higher your SAI, the less likely you are to get need. The lower your SAI, the better chance you have of getting need-based grants. The second type is merit-based scholarships, and who doesn't love merit scholarships because it means you're awesome at something, right? You might have incredible grades. You might be the best football player on your team. You might be a debate genius. There's all kinds of things that can get you merit-based scholarships, and it's free money awarded based on your unique talent. So we all love to be told we're great at something. And then finally, there's self-help. It's loans and work study. It's not free money, but work study is something great. When I was in college, I went to the University of Nebraska. I swiped IDs at the rec center. Kids would come in and play basketball, go lift weights, and it was my job to make sure they had a school ID. And I was able to sit there and study and work on work on my education while I had a job. So it was really, really convenient. All right. So when we're talking about need-based financial aid, this is probably the most important thing everybody needs to know. And my suggestion is going to be go into MyCap and calculate your SAI as soon as possible. That's going to be the key to understanding if you're going to get need-based aid. And there's a formula that it's used essentially at every school. So the cost of attendance, the sticker price, minus the student aid index, whatever is calculated through MyCap or the software. And it's basically what colleges and the government think you can afford to pay annually for higher education. I'll tell you now, I've never heard anybody get their SAI and say, oh, wow, that's it. It's almost always higher than people think. And in general, it's the lowest amount you can kind of expect to pay to go to school. And then so cost of attendance minus that SAI equals your need. And then that's the amount of financial aid your family is potentially eligible to receive. It will come one of the three ways we, well, actually, need-based aid is one of the three ways that we just talked about. Every school treats it differently. Some schools will meet 100% of needs. Some schools will meet a lower percent. Some schools will meet a higher percent with grants or free money. Some schools lower percent. So every school has their own formula of how much need-based aid they give and how they do it. But this is the most important formula in terms of figuring out what college is actually going to cost you. And your student aid index is probably the most important first step. So I'll just pause there for a second and see if anybody's got any questions. Anybody want to throw anything into the Q&A and see if there's anything that hasn't made sense yet? Well, we'll keep moving right along. So what do you need to know about your SAI? Excuse me. Well, there's two components to it. No, your SAI is not different at every school. Your SAI is a single calculation, but how the school may give you need-based aid could be different at every school. So your SAI is a single calculation. There are two versions of it. There's one from the FAFSA and one from the CSS profile. And we'll get to that in just a minute. So what's considered an asset? Basically everything you own but your retirement account. So any financial assets, if you have stocks, bonds, CDs, any of those accounts that are not retirement accounts. So 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, 403bs, those are not counted, but anything that would be a taxable account is. And you need to use the value of those assets when you submit the financial aid form. So typically that's going to be around October 1st of next year. And is debt considered? It really is not. Debt and expenses are not really considered. The only component of that is in terms of home equity and what you own in your home, but it's not for both applications. So like I said, there's two components, a parent component and a student component, and they're assessed differently. So parent assets are factored into SAI at a lower rate. That's important to know. So you don't want to have any assets in your student's name if you can avoid it. If you've got time now until October 1st and they have high balances in a UGMA or UTMA account or a high balance in a checking account, those are assets you'll want to work to get out of the students' names. Grandparent 529s and sibling 529s are not included as an asset for the student you're completing the application for. Parent-owned 529s for that student would be included. And then jointly owned accounts, you would want to make sure you're valuing them only at 50%. So if it's a account with a mother and a daughter, 50% would be valued at the parent's asset and 50% would be valued at the student asset. And then real estate is going to vary depending on which application you're filling out. The CSS profile is going to consider all real estate, so including home equity as a liquid asset, and then any second properties as an asset, where the FAFSA would only count second properties as an asset. So they don't consider the home equity you have in your primary residence. So there's lots of variables, but you guys don't need to worry about all the specifics. If you're using the software, it will figure it out. And then you'll have access to CAP Pros to kind of answer questions if something comes up. All right, so what income do colleges consider? Again, income is probably the biggest driver of your SAI, and they use what's called the prior year tax return. So for those of you who will be attending college in the fall of 2025, they'll use your 2023 tax return, the one you essentially just completed here in April and maybe just submitted. And what's going to drive that SAI is your AGI on line 11 of your 1040. So everything that flows down to your AGI is going to drive that SAI number. If you're in class of 2026, it's your 2024 return. That's my daughter. She's a sophomore. She'll be a rising junior. It will be next year's tax returns when I'm filling this out for her in a couple years. Class of 2027 is 2025. And students do have an income allowance of up to $9,410 for the 2024-2025 school year. So if they have a job and they made that much, it's not going to count against them on their SAI calculation. As you start to make more than that in a given year, it will count and be assessed in your SAI formula. All right. I am not sure if these PowerPoint slides will be delivered to the school or not. I will check on that and see if I can get an answer before the end of this presentation. All right, so merit-based aid. This is the second part. It's offered through the offices of admissions, not the Office of Financial Aid. It's typically used to get students to attend, right? It's a reward or an enticement for students to attend. One thing that's different between merit-based awards and need-based awards is need-based awards you're applying for every year, and it's a different application for each year based on your tax return. Merit-based awards are typically all 4 years, so if you can get them, they're great. As long as you maintain a certain number of hours, a certain GPA, you're probably going to get to keep that award all 4 years. Again, it's based on grades and test scores. Different schools have different awarding methodologies. Some are automatic, like the University of Alabama. If you know your test scores and your GPA, you can see exactly what kind of scholarship you're going to get before you even apply. Other schools are more competitive. The University of Louisville, for example, they have competitive scholarships, but they actually list the rubric of how you're scored right on their website. So there's different awarding methodologies, and as long as you're aware of those, you should be able to take advantage of them. And typically, private colleges are far more generous than state schools. Although we're starting to see public schools start to give a little bit more merit aid here and there. I'd just say anecdotally, if you're looking for a public school with scholarships, I'd start by looking at the size of the state population. The smaller the population, the more likely they are to give merit scholarships to entice students to come there. In the state of Texas, where I live, there is about 300 to 350,000 graduating seniors every year. the public schools like UT and A&M, the top 6% are auto admin, and they can fill their entire freshman class just with that top 6%. So they typically don't give as much merit awards as other states do because we have so many graduating seniors and so few spots at those big private schools. So what if you don't qualify for need-based aid? Again, I think that's the most important thing, and I can't really reiterate it enough. When you leave here today, go to MyCap, figure out what your SAI is, and you'll be able to compare that against the cost of attendance of any school you're interested in. And basically, if your SAI is lower than the cost of attendance, you'll probably be eligible for some need. If it's higher than the cost of attendance, then you won't get any need-based aid, and you'll really need to be focusing on merit scholarships. So what's the most important thing when it comes to thinking about merit scholarships? You need to identify where the student will be eligible for scholarships, right? Not every school gives scholarships. Some are more generous than others. For example, the Ivy League. Everybody who's going there is already valedictorian of their class, great grades, great test scores. So they do not give merit awards, neither do the NESCAC schools. But if you have a low SAI, an Ivy League, and you get accepted, may very well be the lowest cost school for you to attend, even though the sticker price is high. With a low SAI, they might very well meet 100% of your need, and you might be able to go there for a pretty low cost. On the other hand, if you're a good student and you get accepted to the Ivy League, and you come from a family with a lot of financial means, you can probably expect to pay full freight, the full cost. So it goes both ways. A couple things to know. Most colleges require the FAFSA and CSS profile in order to qualify for scholarships. So if you're not completing those applications, you might be excluded from some opportunities. So, people ask us all the time, is it really worth completing the FAFSA or applying for financial aid? Maybe I make too much, I won't get anything. I tell every family I work with, absolutely, you should complete the FAFSA, both for the merit scholarships, and you never know how situations can change, right? I've worked with a family who was a very high earning family, but they were also high spenders, and they lost the breadwinner suddenly to a car accident. And when that happened, mom had a tough time coming up and paying for college the next semester. So if you would have had the FAFSA in place, it makes it kind of easier and streamlined to have potentially taken some of that money or applied for maybe a Parent Plus loan. So in every case, I think it's well worth it to complete the FAFSA. The other thing you want to think about in merit aid is applying to competing schools, right? I think most of the CAP pros will suggest you should apply to between 10 and 20 universities, colleges, schools, and you want a nice variety, right? You want to have some that are reach schools. You want to have some that are safety schools. You want to have some that may be expensive. You want to have some maybe not so much. And you should be willing to attend at least 5 to 10 of those 20 schools in order to get your best deal. An example of that, here in Texas, people who are applying to Baylor might also apply to TCU, for example. And if you get a nice merit scholarship from one, you can use it as leverage to appeal to the other, hopefully asking for more money along the way. So that's the reason people would say apply to competing schools. If you're not sure if schools compete, an easy way to start is look at their sports teams. Do they compete against each other in sports? Are they in close proximity? Do they have similar programs? Those are all things you can consider when you're applying to schools. And sometimes it makes sense to apply to a competing school, even if you have no intention of going there, just for the leverage to use an award against another school that you really do want to attend. So those are all important things. The next thing is, if you don't qualify for need-based aid, you might need to think about value schools. Schools on the lower end of the tuition range are considered value schools. It's hard to believe that 40,000 constitutes value these days, but it really does. James Madison in Virginia is a great school. Their cost of attendance is around $40,000 a year. Other great options are public schools and honor programs or unique programs. For example, I went to the University of Nebraska. They have something called the RAKES program for students interested in computer science and business. It's a joint program. It was founded by Jeff Rakes, who was a former Microsoft executive, and went on to start the Rakes Foundation and started the program at Nebraska. It's a small program with a cohort of 20 to 40 kids a year, students a year. You're in a separate dorm. You're guaranteed internships. The likelihood of having a job when you leave there is extremely high. So there's different programs within schools that are considered extremely valuable and make a lot of sense financially. All right. So I know I've been going pretty fast. I'll kind of slow down and see if we get any other questions into the Q&A for a second. Nothing popping in, so we'll keep going. So I spent a lot of time talking about MyCap. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and log into it for a minute and just kind of show you how you would complete the profile, how it will identify what your SAI is, and how it might be helpful. It's just going to be a short demo to give you an idea. So I'm going to switch screens real quick. Can you guys see my screen? Make sure I shared the right one. Sorry about that. All right, so I think you can see that. So when you log in, this is an account I've mocked up for my daughter, some of the schools she's interested in. The most important things you're going to see are up here in the upper right, there's a profile button. So you can click on that profile and there's going to be a bunch of questions that you need to fill out, and you need to make sure your profile is 100% complete. So your name, your student, where do you live, how many people in your household, GPA, test scores, all kinds of financial information. But as long as you put all that information in there and complete it, you'll have a full profile, and the software will be able to calculate your SAIs. So at the top, you can see federal SAI 27,200. That would be for public schools. Apply to, University of Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, Colorado Boulder, Colorado State, schools like that. The institutional SAI is a range, and that applies to private schools. And it's a range because some of those schools treat things differently. Some will have higher assessments on home equity than others. Some will have different assessments on business owners than others. So it's really important to understand that. And an example I would use is Northwestern up by Chicago and Stanford, right? If you get accepted to both those schools, I think they're both considered good academic schools. But Northwestern treats home equity differently and will be slightly more expensive or have a higher impact on your SAI than home equity would be at Stanford. So it might make, all things being equal, it might potentially make Stanford less expensive for some families. So things to think about. It's also going to ask you for your resources you have available for college. If you have 529 savings, if you can pay out of pocket, it will help you give a budget and will ultimately tell you if schools are affordable. And then last, you can start to search for schools. So the search function is great. You can click search and you can search, distance from home, a specific state. Do you want a big school, a medium school, a large school? Only schools with certain majors. There's all kinds of search criteria, and it will help you identify the schools you're interested in. And then once you have the schools, Austin College is a small school just north of Dallas. And with all my information in here, I can see the cost of attendance is $69,000, but my student might be eligible for need-based grants of $33,000 or a merit-based scholarship of $28,000. So in a case like this, it's important to note that you typically get one or the other, the greater of one or the other, but not both. So in a case like this, I'm not going to get what 61,000 off the 69,000. I'm going to get a total of the higher number. So it'll probably be a combination of merit and need for around 33,000 to make my net cost 35. So this is again, great software. It can do a lot of things. It can tell you what your estimated out of pocket costs are. If you put in your budget, it can tell you if it's going to be within your budget and affordable. And as you start to get award letters from other schools later in the year, it will tell you if your awards are fair and if you have a good chance of appealing. So again, it's an incredible tool and should be the primary source of how you make your start your college search and understand what it's going to cost you. All right, I'm going to switch back to the presentation now. All right. So when we think about applying for financial aid, no two schools are alike, right? Like every school treats it different. They may have sooner deadlines, they may have later deadlines, they may only require the FAFSA, they may require both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So it's important to understand what the school is going to require. If you're not sure if the school requires the CSS profile, you can go to this link. I'll put it in the chart or in the chat, excuse me. Chat. And I will share that screen real quick. And this is a list of schools, participating institutions, and program. And it's important for two reasons. One, it tells you if you'll need to complete the CSS profile. And two, it tells you how they treat the non-custodial parents. So if you're potentially a divorced family, a separated family, some schools will treat you differently. If it says no, it means they're only going to count the income and the assets of the custodial parent. And if it says yes, they're going to count both parents. So it's important to understand that, and it may make some schools more expensive for some families and some less expensive. So very important to understand and a good resource to have. So make sure you save that link if possible. All right, so yeah, I can't stress the next point enough. Deadlines are super important. If you miss a deadline, you might eliminate yourself from getting any kind of financial aid. And schools are unrepentant about that. They don't feel bad. Things that are really important in regard to this, once your student starts to apply for financial aid, you need to use an email address that they'll have access to for the 4 years after school, right? You don't want to use a high school email address that you lose access to when you graduate, because schools typically communicate only with the student, not with the parents, and they do it one of two ways: either email directly to the student or through the school's portal. So you really have to stay on top of your students, make sure they are checking their email, make sure they are staying on top of the portals, meeting the deadlines. It's important because your major may have a sooner deadline than the school at large. There's all kinds of things you'll need to stay on top of, and it's the responsibility of the student or parent to know these deadlines and requirements. The colleges are not going to be proactive, and like I said, in most cases, they're only going to communicate with the student. Excuse me. All right, so to apply for federal aid using the FAFSA, that typically goes live of October 1st of your senior year. Just by a show of hands in the chat or anything, how many of you had seniors this year and had to deal with all the challenges around the FAFSA and the FAFSA Simplification Act, the delays of it not being open till January, and then the delays in processing. Did anybody get impacted by that? And have you finally got all your awards for any older students? All right, well, I'll keep an eye out for that. But again, it goes first, October 1st. So we're hoping next year they'll be back on that early schedule. As a goal, I would encourage everybody to make sure and try and have the financial aid applications and all your admissions applications completed by November 1st. I think that's generally a good goal for regular decision and financial aid. Again, 2023 is going to be the base income year for the class of 2025. So for those of you, you've just finished your taxes, those are the numbers they're going to be used. And the custodial parent who submits the form, you only need one FSA ID for a parent if you're married. And if you're divorced or separated, then you'll need to make the decision of which parent is considered the custodial parent. And it's based on who provides 51% of the financial support or the most financial support. So this is a really important thing to note. It can have a huge impact on what your SAI is. If you split all expenses 50-50, you know, as an advocate for you, the parents, and not these colleges and not the Department of Education, we would encourage you to make sure that the lower earning parent or the parent with the lower income provides at least one extra dollar of support for that student. And it can make a big difference on the cost you pay for college over 4 years. Again, you'll need 2 FSA IDs, one for a student and one for a parent. They need to have unique IDs, and you would log in via studentaid.gov. This is a live link. You can use it to get there. And you'll use that username and password perpetually. So if you were a student, you know, several years ago and had student loans, your same user ID and password may very well still work however many years later. So that's important. So when you're thinking of completing the FAFSA and planning ahead, there's definitely opportunities. I just touched on the divorced and separated family. Multiple kids in college at the same time can have an impact. It's not considered in the SAI calculation anymore, but some schools will give a discount. Typically, private schools will give a discount if you have 2 kids in college at the same time, and it may reduce your SAI for each child a little bit. Parents who are business owners, this is a big deal. Previous to last year, anybody who was a business owner, if you had less than 100 employees, they did not ask you to value or assess the value of your business. So starting this year, any business owner is asked to assess a value to it. So if you haven't had a professional valuation, you know, it could be hard. You're going to have to come up with that on your own. We would want to encourage you to make sure not to value that business any higher than absolutely necessary, right? So if you make widgets or have real estate or money in the bank, obviously you'd have to disclose those assets. But if you're in, you know, an intellectual property type business, say you run a dance studio and you're the only dance instructor, well, if you got hit by a bus, you might be able to make the argument that your business would kind of close up and there's no value assessed to it. So keep that in mind if you're a business owner, and make sure, I can't stress it enough, not to overvalue your business. Families with multiple students that I mentioned in point number 2, when you're filling out the application and they ask for the assets, make sure you only include the 529 balance of the student going to college. If you have 3 students and you've saved 30,000 for each student, you would say you have 30,000, not 90,000. So that's very important. If you overvalue those assets, you'd have to basically appeal or file a change of circumstances form, and that could delay how long it takes to get your aid, or you may not even get the appeal honored. So you want to make sure you create or you complete this application correctly. Our experience tells us nearly 7 out of 10 people make a mistake when completing the financial aid applications. So the more you know, the more you understand, the less likely you are to make an error, and the more likely you are to maximize your opportunity for financial aid. Parents, if you make significant contributions to your 401k or 403b, that income is not added back in as income anymore where it was previously. So by actually saving for retirement, you might be able to reduce your SAI. And I will pause there for just a minute and see if anybody has any questions. I'm starting to get a complex. There haven't been very many questions, so either I'm doing really good or really bad, and I'm not sure which one it is. Well, we'll keep going. So the CSS profile, about 200 colleges require this additional application. Again, it's the more selective and private schools, not the public state flagship universities. They treat home equity as a liquid asset, and they treat it differently, right? Some schools will assess it at a lower rate. Some schools will assess it at a higher rate. Some schools will cap it, and each school can be different. So when you're figuring your home equity, you want to make sure, just like a business owner, not to overvalue your home equity. When you're looking at the value of your company, or excuse me, value of your home, here in Texas, we have the appraisal district that determines the value of our home for tax purposes. There's Zillow, and then there's also like the Federal Housing Authority website where it can calculate it. So, my advice would be look at all three of those, or if you have access to an appraiser, a friend who's an appraiser, potentially have an appraisal, and start with the lowest possible value, right? Then you'll want to make sure that you're including all the debt you owe on the house, your primary mortgage, if you have a HELOC or a second loan, you want to make sure and subtract that out and not just use the value of the house. It's the value of the house minus anything owed on it. Divorced and separated families, again, I shared that link earlier. It's really important to understand, is the school you're considering, are they going to consider one parent or both parents? That can have a huge difference, especially if there's a large disparity of income between parents. Business owners, we talked about this for the FAFSA. We definitely do not want to overvalue your business. Make sure it's reasonably able to be supported, but keep it as low as possible. Let's see. Much more invasive and complex with a lot more questions than FAFSA. The FAFSA should take you maybe 15 to 30 minutes at most. It's designed to be able to be completed on a phone now. It doesn't take much time. The CSS profile could potentially have over 150 questions. So you need a lot more information, a lot more patience. If you happen to, have a drink while you're doing something stressful, you may need a whole bottle of wine or a 6-pack just in case. It's just way more invasive into your financial life. And you would log into the CSS profile using the Students College Board credentials. So, all right. So I see a couple questions. Let's see. Will after-tax contributions be included in SAI calculation? Yeah, that, because there's no deduction for that on your income tax. That's just taxable income. I assume you mean if you have like a 401k option in your Roth, that will not be deducted. And then next question says, in your system, it only asks for 401k contributions for one parent, but gross income for both. Should we combine the 401k? Yeah, I would combine those contributions for both parents. That will give you the most accurate picture. Okay. All right. And try and keep those questions in the Q&A section and not the chat. So let's see. In your system, the student's 529 balance included under parent assets or just in the space for the 529 balance? I will need to go and look at that because if there's a 529 balance on my cap, that's where you put it. However, on the FAFSA, it actually it goes under parent assets. Just make sure you don't double count it. And if we have time at the end, I'll bring the system back up and take a look to clarify that. What sort of documentation do you have to submit for these applications, tax returns, bank statements, or do you just report the numbers and they trust you? So that's kind of a more complex question. It depends. Basically, you're reporting the information, but the schools can subject you to what they call verification or ask you to provide supporting documents via IDoc. So very often, yes, they'll ask for a copy of your tax transcripts. They may ask for bank statements, W-2s, pay stubs, stuff like that. So again, you'll need to be prepared to deliver that information if asked. Thank you for the questions. We appreciate it. All right, so that's CSS profile. So admissions and applications. There's a couple different ways to apply to college. They have what's called early decision, early action, and regular decision. And why this is important is we're seeing more and more schools fill their incoming freshman classes from early decision. So things that are important to know about this is it's a binding decision, and by applying early decision, your odds of getting in might actually be higher because schools tend to be taking more students through the early decision process. You have to have a very good idea of what your net cost is going to be. Using the software for any early decision application is going to be more important than ever because you're basically committing to go there no matter what the cost or no matter what financial aid award you get from them. And really the only way you can break a early decision is if you financially cannot afford to go there. So you lose leverage on appeals. You typically you don't have a lot of opportunity, but if you're trying to get into a more selective school, it may be a great tool. Early action is not binding and it can help with admissions. They may look for demonstrated interest, meaning, how likely are you to go there if they accept you? There's things you can do to help with that, like take online visits, open any of the emails they send you. If they have links, make sure and click on them. All kinds of things like that. If you apply early action, you might have a greater chance of getting merit aid. And if you get accepted, you have more time to make decisions. So there's some other benefits with early action. And then regular decision is the latest deadline for both admissions and financial aid. And some colleges only have two options, the early decision and regular decision. So, I guess the first thing is use your early decision selectively and make sure it is the most important. And make sure if there's deadlines, you're hitting them all, and don't miss the regular decision deadlines because those are going to be your last chance to apply. All right. Like another question, for retirement account managed by your company like a 401k, what do you have to report if you have automatic payroll deduction contributions and your company matches your contributions? Does that count as income? Does it have to be reported? No, you would just report your own contributions. You don't need to report what the company matches. All right. So that kind of covers the enrollment and the decisions. So let's talk about appeals. I mentioned earlier that you might want to apply to competing schools. There's two types of appeals. There's a need-based appeal that's based on your SAI, and then there would be a merit-based appeal. And you want to, have a great narrative. You want to bring color and explain to these schools, basically write a love letter to these schools of why you want to go there and why they should love you back, right? I tell families all the time, love the schools that love you. There's going to be schools that want you to go there, And the more they want you to go there, the better your chance of getting additional aid. You should always ask for a specific amount. The software, MyCap, will help you do that. It can kind of give you an idea of what your award should be, or what we think it should be. And if you got less than that, then that's a starting point to ask for more. The more specific you are and the more explicit you can be why you deserve that, the better your odds of doing that, of getting that. I tell families all the time, 100% of the time, you will not get what you don't ask for. Show the awards you got offered by these other colleges, right? I mentioned that you should apply to between 10 and 20 schools. Hopefully you get merit-based awards from all of them, and you can use them as leverage. Life is all about leverage, and use it when you have it. Show them how much these other schools want you to go there. Show them, what percent of the cost of attendance you got awarded from these other schools. Those are important things. You can potentially challenge expenses that are not considered on taxes. Sometimes schools will, if you're a business owner, they'll look at your business return and say, hey, even though the IRS allows that expense, we're not going to, and they'll potentially add it back in as income. If you have big medical expenses, you might be able to challenge on those. Unfortunately, every year there's a lot of people who have unexpected illnesses or cancer, different things like that. Those could be things that you might be able to appeal on. Be persistent. Let them know, that you want to go there, that you can demonstrate interest, that you believe you're an educated consumer and you understand the financial aid process. And the more you can explain why you think you're entitled or should receive more aid, the better your odds of getting it. And especially on merit-based appeals, we want the student to take the charge, right? We want that student to explain, number one, why the school wants them. Number two, why they want to go to that school. Things that are unique. Maybe there's a teacher that's written a book that your student has read that led them into that course of study. Maybe that there's a professor that, does something unique in the business world that they can't get at any other school. Maybe there's classes offered at that school that are not offered by other universities. Those are all things that you want the student to really lead the charge on. All right, one more question. The tax return year we'll have to use is not an accurate reflection of our normal income because I got a big one-time bonus that I never got before and won't likely get again. How do we communicate that a normal financial year for us is different than the tax year we have to report? That is a fantastic question. So there's two parts to this answer that I can't stress enough that are very important. One, when you complete the application, just provide the bare minimum of the information they're asking for. So on the FAFSA, you're going to essentially have to complete every question, and you have to allow them to pull your tax return. So there's nothing you can do. But there's going to be a question that says, are there any special circumstances? Do not communicate this one-time bonus on the application. You want to hold that and wait until you get your financial aid award letter, generally around spring break, March or April. The reason you don't want to put it on the application is because they can say, okay, hey, that was on the application, we considered it, this is our best award. But if you hold it back and you get your award and use it to appeal, they can't say they've already considered it, right? So it's kind of holding it as leverage. And the way I like to frame it is once they see it, they can't unsee it. So if you have that high income, they're going to think you still have the potential to earn that, regardless of you tell them, it's a one-time bonus or something. Now, so you'll wait for that appeal process in March or April, and you won't put that on the financial aid application. Same with the CSS profile. The one thing that's different about the CSS profile that we should communicate is there are fields you do not have to complete. So as you're completing that application, some have like a red asterisk, or if you click next, won't let you go on without completing that field. But on the CSS profile, you would only in general want to complete the bare minimum, only the fields they require, and not give the schools any additional information. If they come back and ask for something later, it's great. It becomes a conversation. You can provide it. You never want to lie. You never want to be fraudulent, but you just don't want to give them any extra ammunition that they could potentially use against you. So I hope that makes sense. All right. All right. So next steps. One of the next steps is, I showed you on the software where the profile is. There's a button up there that shows speak with an expert. So once you've done that, if you feel like you're going to need some extra help, you can use the speak with an expert button. I have a limited amount of availability. If you're interested, I'm offering short 15-minute calls. These are not answer all your financial aid question calls. These are, you can tell me about your situation and I can explain if we might be able to support or provide you, guidance through your process because it's unique. So I'll put that in the chat if you're really interested. I've got some limited availability. But don't just focus on me. You've got your MyCap profile and an account. You can go use the Talk to an Expert, and there's tons of experts that are, outstanding, incredible people, probably even far knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than me. So just make sure if you need help, you're not just looking for me. You can get it from any of our experts. So that's that. And then I want to make sure that I leave this slide up with plenty of time so you guys can open your software, start to sign up. Make sure you capture the school code, Dawson School 100. Go ahead and take some pictures. We've got about 9 minutes, so I'll keep this open and look for the Q&A. And then if no questions come through in the last minute, I'll log back into the software, share my screen, and try and go look at the question regarding 529 and parent assets. We just want to make sure you don't duplicate that in our software. Did you guys find this useful? Was it helpful? Is there any more information I can provide? We want to make sure that you feel like this was a good use of your time. We appreciate you coming out. I'm a parent just like you guys. I've got 2 kids, a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old. So I am not that far behind y'all when it comes to going through this process. And, I live and die with every one of you who've gone through this process and have questions about financial aid. It's just, I know how overwhelming it is, how, there's nothing more emotional than your kids and your money. So the 2 most emotional things are lumped together in one shot. And, we want to make sure that you guys are making informed decisions, not paying so much for college that you end up not saving for retirement and have to live in our students' basements 15 years down the road. So make sure and make great decisions. I've been doing this for 12 years and I've never heard, I shouldn't say never, but I very rarely hear students say, I regret the school I went to. But in my job as a financial advisor, I hear on a regular basis people telling me I regret how many student loans I took or how much I borrowed to go to school. So keep that in mind. You're talking to somebody who's very opinionated here, but there's lots of great schools out there. Where you go is not who you'll be. Make a good financial decision and make sure and take advantage of all the resources CAP has. And I will go back into the software now and double check on where to put that number in the profile. So bear with me just 1 second. Share screen. Share. All right. So in the profile, we're coming to the personal information. We're scrolling down and we're looking at parents' information. Well, let's make sure I didn't pass the 529 plan for the student. Oh. I apologize. We get so used to doing this. I should have it memorized, but all right. Gross earnings, adjusted gross earnings, taxes paid, parent guardian, pre-tax retirement contributions, and child support. Yeah. So yeah, and here I would just include it in the non-retirement savings and investments. So that's where that number would go. It could go there. And then I think you're also probably looking at my college budget, and it's asking here, do you have a 529 plan? Yes, and then you can put the balance in there. So if you put it in here, you don't need to put it in the parent asset, but if you don't have it, don't put it here, you should put it in the parent asset. So hope that makes sense. And this is used specifically on the how to pay functionality of the MyCap software. All right, let me stop there. We've got about 5 minutes left. Any other questions? Oh, maybe a couple have come in. All right. Well, on that note, I will stick around the last 4 minutes, but that's kind of the end of the presentation. We appreciate your time. We are thrilled that you guys are going to be informed consumers, and then best of luck on your college journey as it gets started. All right. Have a great evening, everybody. Appreciate your time and thanks, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Have a great evening.